we're gathered here because we believe in God and we know about Satan. But today we're going to really dissect the Bible and really understand God and Satan through the Bible. Because it actually holds a lot of details of who God is, what He does, why He created this creation, and where Satan came from. So if you guys are ready, we're going to begin. So understanding God first, like I said, we all believe in God, but if we were asked to describe God and explain God using the very own Bible that we believe in and that we follow, how well would we do? Well, in the Bible, the very first verse in the Bible explains to us what God does, right? And what His job is. What does God do? What's His occupation? What's His job? What's His title? If you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, what does it say? That God has created the heavens and the earth, right? So let's turn to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and let's see what God is able to do. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It's the very first verse in the Bible. I'm pretty sure we know this very well. Let's read that together. Nice and loud, and begin.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Alright, so in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says that in the beginning, God is the one that created the heavens and the earth. Now, we all know that very well, and that's implying that God Himself is the creator. Very simple. If God is the one that created the heavens and the earth, then He Himself is the creator. Well, let me ask you a follow-up question. I'm pretty sure we all knew that. Did you ever ask yourself, why did God create the creation? Why did God create heavens and specifically the earth? Well, the Bible answers that as well. In the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, it says that just as a man builds a house, God built everything. And everything in Genesis 1:1, we see that it is the heavens and the earth. So in the end, why did God create the heavens and the earth? Well, what's the reason a man builds a house? To live in it, right? To dwell within it. That's the very reason why God created the heavens and the earth. Let's turn to Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4 explains to us why God created the heavens and the earth. Let's read that together. And begin.
For every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything.
Amen. So it says that God is the builder of everything as a man builds a house. Right? So why did God create His creation, specifically the heavens and the earth, to dwell within it? To dwell within God's creation. So in the beginning, that was His plan, that was His purpose. As a creator, He created a beautiful home called the heavens and the earth to dwell within it, forever with His creation. Right? Now, if God is the creator, that's also implying that He Himself has not been created. Because if God is also a created being, that means there has to be another creator. Then He wouldn't be the creator, He would be also a creation. So by implying that God is the creator, what does that mean? That He Himself has not been created. And have you ever asked the simple question of where did God come from? See, these are the details that I'm talking about. A lot of believers, we believe in God, but when we're asked simple questions of why did God create, or where did God Himself come from, right? We might not be able to answer that, but the Bible is. Right? The Bible gives us that answer. Now, a long time ago, thousands of years ago, there was a guy named Moses. And Moses was someone who was chosen by God, and he was sent on a mission. But before Moses went on that mission, Moses turned to God and asked Him, said, hey, who are you? If someone asked me, who sent me, how shall I introduce you? And God said, I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent me to you. So in that story, God introduces Himself as I am. What do you think that means if God introduces Himself as I am? What do you think that represents? Basically, it's representing that He is a self-existent being. That He has not been created, but He Himself is the beginning. That He just is. That's why all throughout the scriptures He also introduces Himself as the one who was, the one who is, and the one who will be. And also, He also introduces Himself as the Alpha and the Omega. Now, Alpha and the Omega is the first letter in the Greek alphabet and the last letter, representing the beginning and the end. So it's implying that God is the beginning and He's the end. He was there in the past, He's here now in the present, and He will be there in the future. That He just is, He's a self-existent being. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Let's read that together. And begin.
God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you.
Amen. And so then once again, God introduces himself as I am. What does that represent? That he is a self-existent being. It means that he himself has not been created, but all began with God. And there's a really interesting verse that explains that. And it's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 20. Let's also turn to Revelation chapter 1, verse 20. Revelation chapter 1. I'm sorry. Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. Yeah, Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. Alright, let's read that together, nice and loud, and begin.
I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty.
Amen. So once again, it explains that God is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, the one who was, who is, and who is to come. So now we know what that means. Now we know where God came from. Where did he come from? Well, he is the beginning. No being created God, that's what he is, God. Everything began with God. So now we're able to slowly understand God through the scriptures and all the little details as well. In Genesis chapter 1:1, what does it say? That God is the creator. Why did he create the creation? Because he wanted to dwell within it. Right? Then where did God himself come from? Well, he is the beginning. He is the one that began all this work of life and all creation. Now a lot of people ask the question of, why can I not see God? Why can I not just speak to God like we're talking to each other right now? Well, it's because God himself is not a physical being like we are, right? What is God? He's spirit. He's above and beyond the flesh. Let's turn to John chapter 4, verse 24. John chapter 4, verse 24. John chapter 4, verse 24. This one explains to us that God himself is not a physical being, but he's a spirit. Nice and loud, and begin.
God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in spirit and in truth.
Okay. So it says here clearly that God is not a physical being, but he is a spirit. Therefore his followers and his worshippers must also follow and worship in spirit and in truth. Now in a later lesson we will be learning of what it means to follow and worship in spirit and in truth. But so far we have the basic details regarding God, and we were able to get all these details from the Bible in itself. So now if someone is able to ask you, right, explain to me your God, you should be able to use these verses, right, to explain God.
Okay.
Can you do it? Yeah? Try it. Genesis 1:1, what is God?
He is the creator,
If he's the creator, well, why did he create his creation?
so he can dwell with them.
Right? Well then, if God himself is the creator, it means that he has not been created. Then where did he come from?
He is self-existent.
What does that mean?
That means he has no creator above him. He has been, he is, and he is to come.
Very good. Therefore, why can we not see or just speak to God like we talk to a friend?
Because he's a spirit.
Because he's a spirit. Very good. Right? Now, God also likes to explain himself using figurative language. Right? It's called figurative language, and it's also called parables. Now, the Bible is full of them. And today I want to show you one of them. Because God knows that we cannot see him and talk to him, right? He uses a physical object to help us understand what his characteristics are like. Right? And he calls himself the Sun. S-U-N. The Sun. And when you look up in the sky in the day, we see the sun. God says, well, that's kind of like me. What do you think that means? Why do you think God says, I'm the sun? It doesn't mean that he's literally the sun. But he's using and he's borrowing the characteristics of the sun to help us understand what kind of a being God is. Well, first of all, if you look at the sun, right, to us, to the people on this earth, how many suns do we have? There's only one sun, right? And according to the scriptures, how many true gods can there be? One, like real God? Let's turn to John chapter 17, verse 3. Let's check. John chapter 17, verse 3. John chapter 17, verse 3. This one explains to us how many true gods we can have. Nice and loud. John chapter 17, verse 3, and begin.
Now this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent.
Amen. So it says that God is the only true God. Now, by implying that He is the only true God, that's also implying that there are many what? There are many gods, but amongst the many, there is only one who is true. So because there's only one true God, well, just like the question before, to us, to the people on this earth, how many sons do we have? One. Just like there's only one true God. Then what do you think would happen if the sun just darkened, if the sun fell? What would happen to life on this earth? Yeah, all life would be gone within, like, I think from what I know, 8 minutes. Did you know that the sunlight we're receiving now is the sunlight that it's giving off 8 minutes ago?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
What? Really?
Yeah. So if the sun darkens out, if the sun blacks out, then we lose that light 8 minutes later.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. So anyways, without the light from the sun, right, there is no life on this planet. Nothing can live without the sun. Just like that, nothing can live without God. So because just like the sun is the one and only source of life, God Himself, He's implying that, hey, look, I am the one and only true God, and I am the source of life, spiritually and physically. And in our solar system, all the other planets, they revolve around the sun. Just like that, whether we know it or not, physically and spiritually, everything revolves around who? Around God. So because all these characteristics are similar to God, God says, I am the Son. All right, let's turn to Psalms chapter 84, verse 11. Psalms chapter 84, verse 11. Psalms, it's in the Old Testament, chapter 84, verse 11. Isn't that pretty interesting? You guys sound very interested. Psalm chapter 84, verse 11. Nice and loud, and begin.
For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does He withhold from those whose walk is blameless.
Amen. So here it says that God is like
Sun.
the sun, right? And the shield. So God is like the sun. Why? Once again, because He's the one and only source of life, and all revolves around Him. That's why 2,000 years ago, as God sent His Son Jesus, what does Jesus say? I am the light. Why? Because what does the sun give? The sun gives light. Right? Now, if you look at our sky, we have one sun, we have one moon, but we have many, many what? Many, many stars. Now, spiritually, God is like that one and only sun. Right? However, if God is like that one and only sun, and there are many stars in the sky, then spiritually, what do you think God considers the many, many stars spiritually? Yeah, He calls it His many angels. Right, so once again, in figurative language, spiritually, God says, I am the one and only sun, and the many angels that I have are like the many stars in the sky. Now, this is very important to understand, because it's not just like a figurative language, it's not just a poem, but God uses this language to help us understand who Satan is as well. He says, as He is the one and only Son, there is a star that has fallen from heaven. Right? It says it was a morning star, a bright morning star that fell from heaven. And the reason why the star fell from heaven, it says because greed and pride entered into his heart. And this morning star wanted to raise his throne above the stars of God. Wanted to be greater than God. And in the end, who is that talking about? That's talking about the creation of Satan. But what we have to realize is, did God create an evil being? God did not create an evil being. It actually says in the Bible that He created a perfect, wise, and beautiful angel. And He even called it the morning star, but it became corrupted. All right, let's turn to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. All right, let's read that together. Isaiah 14, 12, it's in the Old Testament. Begin.
How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations.
Amen. So here it talks about a morning star. And what happened to this morning star? It has fallen from heaven. Right? Now there's a star that fell from heaven. Now either God can be talking about a literal star that fell from heaven, like a meteor, or he's using figurative language to help us understand something else. Well, if you read the next verse, the next couple of verses, it explains to us clearly that this is not talking about a real star. Let's read verse 13 to 15. Verse 13 to 15. Let's see why the star fell from heaven. 13 to 15, nice and loud, and begin.
You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountains. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds, I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit.
Amen. So this morning star, is it talking about an actual star? No, just like God compares himself to the sun, he's talking about an angel as he talks about a star. Then why do you think he's calling this angel a morning star? Why not just a regular star? All these small little words actually have detail. Do you guys know the difference between a star and a morning star? A morning star you can, huh?
One brighter.
Yes. How do you know that it's brighter? It's in the name. Why is a star called a morning star?
You can see it.
Because you can see it in the morning, right? Why are you able to see a star in the morning? Because it's
So bright.
brighter than the other ones, or it's larger than the other ones, right? But if a star represents the angel, that means it's saying that this specific angel was brighter and better than the other angels. However, what happened? He has fallen from heaven. What does that mean? He got disconnected with God. And the reason why he got disconnected with God is in the next couple of verses. Verse 13 to 15, what does it say? He wanted to become greater than God. He wanted to become above God. So what entered into his heart? Greed and pride. Then we know what angel this is talking about. Who is this talking about? Talking about?
Satan?
Yeah, Satan. And did you know Satan is not his real name? Satan is not a name, it's a title. Just like God is not a name, it's a title. Right? Even the devil is not a name, it's a title. So all throughout the Bible, it's actually talking about this one fallen angel. And of course, yes, there are other evil spirits. But the main fallen angel comes out as, well, in the beginning in Genesis, he appears as a serpent. Right? And then all throughout the scriptures, he comes out as Satan or the devil. Now, Satan represents the opposer, the one who goes against God. The devil represents the divider or the destroyer, when he does the work of destroying God's work. And at the end, all the way at the end of the Bible, he comes out as the dragon. Right? But in the end, it's all talking about the same guy. So now we know that there's a morning star, a fallen angel who used to be with God, but fell from God. Why? Because of greed and pride. And there's another verse that well explains this guy. And it says that he was a guardian cherub. You guys know what a cherub is? Yeah, cherub's an angel. If you actually search up the definition of a cherub, it represents a high-ranked angel. So once again, it's representing that it's not any angel, but it's a high-ranked angel. It's a morning star, right? And it says that this morning star, this guardian cherub, was perfect, was wise and beautiful in the eyes of God, until sin was found within it. Right, let's turn to Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12 and 13. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12 and 13. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12 and 13. Nice and loud. And begin.
Son of man, take a lament concerning the kingdom of Tyre, and say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God, every precious stone adorned you. Ruby, topaz, and emerald, chrysolite, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared.
Amen. So here it might seem like it's talking about a person, because in verse 12 it says, concerning the king of Tyre. That's a person. But how do you know that it's not talking about a person, but God is not using this person to explain Satan? Well, I want you to read verse 14. Read the very next verse. Then we clearly see who God is talking about. Verse 14, nice and loud, and begin.
You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones.
Amen. So we clearly see that God is talking about a guardian cherub. And what's a cherub? What is it? Yeah, it's an angel. So we see that God is talking about an angel. And the angel at one point was what? Perfect. It was wise and it was beautiful. In whose eyes? Who's the one that called this angel perfect, smart, and beautiful? God did. Which means when God created this being, this angel, this perfect, wise, and beautiful angel, did he create it to be evil or good? Yeah, he created it to be good. God never intended to create something corrupted or evil. But the problem was what happened to this angel afterwards. Right? Let's read verse 15. Verse 15 and 16. And begin.
You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drew you inspiration from the mount of God, and I expelled you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones.
Amen. Right, so a very angel who was once perfect, wise, and beautiful, what was found in him? Sin. And he became corrupted. Therefore, God had to cast him out. And in Isaiah 14, how does that appear? As a morning star who fell from heaven. So in the end, both these verses are talking about Satan and how he appeared and how he became who he is today. Okay? So one thing that I do want to stop by is how God calls him perfect, wise, and beautiful. Because when we think of Satan, or when Hollywood or the movies portray Satan, how does he appear? Red, dark, right? Ugly, right? Pitchfork, tail with a triangle. But the thing is, in the Bible, he doesn't appear like that at all. How does Satan appear according to the very word of God? Perfect, wise, and beautiful angel. And a lot of people say, well, that was before he betrayed. But the thing is, I want you to think about this. Perfect, he might not be perfect anymore. Right? After he turned his back on God, I'm pretty sure he's no longer perfect in the eyes of God. But what about his wisdom and his beauty? Right? If you're very wise, if you're smart, right? For example, let's say you, right? What's your major? What do you study? Biology, right? So all that knowledge and that wisdom you have regarding biology that you picked up over the years, of studying, let's say one day you went out, you committed a crime by accident, and you went to jail. Right? Just because you went to jail, do you forget all that knowledge that you learned right away? No. Right? And then you, right here. You look the way you look. Right? You look like a very innocent person. And then let's say, one day you went out, you committed a crime, and you went to jail. Does the way she looked changes?
No.
Does she all of a sudden look evil? Like her eyes turn all dark and she starts growing horns? No, she looks exactly the same. Well, what I'm trying to say is, if Satan was wise when he was with God, and if he looked beautiful when he was with God, then just because he left God, does he become stupid and ugly? No, he takes these traits with him. Once again, he's no longer perfect. He's still smart and he's still beautiful. But now here's the problem. The reason why we have the Bible, and the reason why God is he's making us understand Satan, is because now Satan is using his wisdom and his beauty to go against God. And furthermore, to go against the very followers of God, which is us. Right? That's why all throughout the scriptures, what does it say? Beware of Satan, because he's a deceiver. What does it mean to deceive? Yeah, to trick someone. Right? To trick someone into following one thing, thinking it's another. Let's turn to Revelation chapter 20, verse 2 and 3. Revelation chapter 20, verse 2 and 3. Let's see what this fallen angel, Satan, is now using his wisdom and his beauty for. Revelation 20, verse 2 and 3. Let's read that together. Revelation, the very last book. And begin.
He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him, to keep him from seeing the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time.
Amen. So Revelation is it's a very unique book. We'll definitely be learning more about this in the future. But what does it say? That ancient serpent, or Satan, or the devil, or the dragon, which means it's all talking about the same fallen angel. Right? Why is it an ancient serpent? Because the serpent first appeared in Genesis. Satan, the devil, and the dragon appears later on the line, but it's all different titles regarding the same theme. And in the end, what does he do? Until the day God captures him and gets rid of him for good, what will he be doing? He says he is doing the work of deceiving the nations. Right? He's doing the work of deceiving the nations. Which means, who do you think he's going to be deceiving? Yeah, the very people that follow God. And a lot of us think that by believing in God, right, that we're safe. The problem is, according to the scriptures, by believing in God, we become a target. That's why God wrote the scriptures to us. That's why God gave us this letter, to not just help us understand who God is, but also help us understand who the enemy is as well. Why would we want to get to know the enemy? Why would you even want to get to know Satan? So that you can avoid him. Because once again, according to the scriptures, he actually looks beautiful. And he works in beautiful ways. Right? Why? Because we're attracted to those things. It's actually very scary because it says that he actually pretends to be like God. Right? It says that he sets himself up in God's temple, pretending to be God. Let's turn to 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Second Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Nice and loud. And begin.
He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God.
Amen. Right? So 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4 is a warning that God is giving us. What is he saying? Guys, be careful. Because this guy out there, he's setting himself up where? Inside God's temple. The problem is God's temple is where God's followers gather. He sets himself up there pretending to be what? Pretending to be God. Why? So that he can carry out the work of deception. This is why also one of the most important tips that God gives us is, you guys have to learn how to test the spirits. You guys have to learn how to distinguish the spirits. The problem is, can you guys see spirits? Can you guys just talk to spirits? No. Then how are we going to learn how to distinguish spirits? How do you test the spirits if you can't see or talk to them? And that's definitely a lesson that we're going to be learning next time. Let's finish up with this last verse. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. Because now there is two types of spirits, God is giving us this tip. Saying, guys, make sure, don't just believe anything out there. Right? But because even this guy's in my temple pretending to be like me, make sure you guys learn how to test the spirits. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. 1 John, it's all the way towards the back. Nice and loud, and begin.
Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world.
So one advice that God gives us through disciple John is, we have to learn how to test the spirits. But now the question is, how do you test the spirit? And I want you to ask yourself, do you know how to test the spirit? Right? Who wants to learn how to test the spirit? Yeah. So that's what we're going to be covering next time, I promise, right? We're going to be learning next time on how we can test spirits so that we can distinguish what really is from God and what is not from God. What is going to bring us closer to God and what is actually going to take us away from God. Because it actually said that Satan will work in many beautiful ways to trick us and to deceive us. And I'm pretty sure none of us here want to be deceived. Right? And the best way to do that is to learn how to test the spirits using the very word of God that he has given us so that we may only follow what is good and what is from God. Amen?
Amen.
All right, so today we went over God and Satan. Not just knowing about God now, not just believing in God, but now understanding who he is and why he has given us the scriptures. So now you should be able to explain your own God, that He is the creator. Why did He create it? To dwell within it like His house. However, because He is the creator, it means that He is self-existent. What does that mean? That He is the beginning and He is the end. The one who was, is, and will be. Therefore, He is a spirit. He's not a flesh like we are. He's a spirit, that's why we cannot see or speak to Him like we speak to each other. And because He is the one and only true God, He compares Himself to the one and only Son. Right? The one and only source of life, and all revolves around Him. However, because He's like the one and only Son, the many angels that He has with Him in the spiritual realm are considered the many stars. However, amongst the many stars, one of them fell from God, fell from heaven, and He's called a morning star. Why is He a morning star? Because He wasn't just any angel, He was a guardian cherub, a high-ranked angel, who was once perfect, wise, and beautiful until sin and corruption was found within Him. Therefore, God had to cast them out, and as He is away from God now, He is now using His wisdom and His beauty to go against God. How does He go against God? By deceiving the followers of God. Where? Setting Himself in God's temple, pretending to be like God. That's why God gave us the scriptures, so that we can learn how to test the spirits and follow only what is from God. So with that being said, I hope today you were able to take away a lot. Right? And once again, please don't forget that these lessons, the knowledge of the scriptures, is not just for knowledge, but it's to apply to ourselves as a believer, so that we can become better believers in the eyes of God. All right? So with that being said, thank you.